The phone rang in October 1994. Tony Dimitriades, Tom Petty's manager, was on the line. He had a message to deliver. Before he could say a word, the man on the other end cut him off. "Am I fired?" Dimitriades paused. "Yes, Stan, you are. 19 years, every hit, every arena, every harmony. And Tom Petty couldn't pick up the phone himself." Chapter 1. 1976, Los Angeles. A recording session that nobody planned to matter. Stanley Joseph Lynch was 20 years old, from Gainesville, Florida, and flat broke. He'd moved to LA chasing the only thing he was ever going to be good at. Through a mutual friend, fellow Floridian Benmont Tench, Lynch wound up in a studio with guitarist Mike Campbell. Tench called in Tom Petty to help with some vocals. Petty looked through the glass and thought to himself, "This should be my band." By the end of that night, it was. But here's what Lynch walked into that he didn't fully understand yet. 3 of those 5 men already had a history together. Petty, Campbell, and Tench had come up through Mudcrutch, a Gainesville band that predated the Heartbreakers by years. They'd already been through the grind together, the failed record deal, the move west, the collapse. That's a bond you don't manufacture in a recording session. Lynch was a founding heartbreaker. He just wasn't one of the originals. What he was exactly right behind the kit. The slinky pulse on Breakdown, the snap on American Girl, the fills on Here Comes My Girl that usher in the chorus like they've been waiting their whole lives to arrive. Petty would later say Lynch reminded him of Keith Moon, that he had a 5th gear, and when he shifted into it, everything exploded.
I pulled a water moccasin in a boat with me one time out here.
Why?
I didn't want to. I was cleaning out these water lilies and had one little clump left and reached down, grabbed it with my hand, and the moccasin was all tangled up in it.
You had the snake?
I had the snake. I yelled snake rather loudly and threw him into the boat.
Lynch was also the band's main harmony singer in those early years. Never took his eyes off Petty on stage. Could read the movement of a shoulder. Could go anywhere, anytime, without being asked. They were building something real, and for a few years, nobody questioned whether Lynch belonged. But even at the peak of their success, someone was already trying to replace him. Chapter 2, 1979. They're making Damn the Torpedoes. Producer Jimmy Iovine is brought in to make hits, and from day one, he doesn't like what he's hearing from the drum kit, so he brings in other drummers. For weeks, Lynch sits against the wall and watches other men audition for his seat. In his own studio, on his own album. Lynch asked for guidance. Jimmy waved him off. "I was 51 on a list of 50 things," Lynch said later. He was only there to deal with Tom. None of the replacements could do it. In the end, the record didn't work without Lynch. Petty said, when other drummers were brought in, they weren't Stan Lynch. The Heartbreakers were all fingers on the same hand. He would later say, the waiting was so specific to Lynch that no other drummer on earth could have played it. That record is completely him. It's all how the drums are played. Lynch got his seat back. Damn the Torpedoes went 5 times platinum, broke them into arenas worldwide. So Lynch survived. The replacement auditions failed. He was vindicated. But Jimmy had shown Petty something he would never forget. That it was possible to go around his drummer. That the band's name didn't mean every member had to be in the room. That the decision was ultimately Petty's to make, and nobody else's. Tom filed that away. And in 1989, when he walked into a studio with Jeff Lynne and left Stan Lynch off the invite list entirely, that was the day he finally did. Chapter 3. Petty steps away from the band. He calls the project Full Moon Fever, framed as a solo record, a creative detour outside the Heartbreakers world. He makes it with Jeff Lynne, his fellow traveling Wilbury, and guitarist Mike Campbell. Tench plays keys. Howie Epstein, who'd replaced original bassist Ron Blair back in 1982, is on bass. Petty, Campbell, and Tench, the 3 who came from Gainesville, the 3 who had Mudcrutch, and Epstein, who'd earned his place in the room years earlier. Every heartbreaker Petty trusted. Every one except Stan Lynch. No phone call. No heads up. Lynch finds out the way outsiders find out, through someone other than the man himself. He is still officially the drummer of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. His name is still on that contract. He is just not in that building. Now here is what makes this worse. The songs on Full Moon Fever are not experimental left field recordings. They are not jazz detours or acoustic folk records. I Won't Back Down, Free Fallin', Runnin' Down a Dream, massive, driving rock songs. Songs Lynch had spent his entire career proving he could play. Songs that sound, to anyone listening, like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers songs. Because they are. They just don't have Lynch on them. Teddy said later that Lynch didn't like those songs anyway. Lynch said, there were just a handful of songs on that record I didn't like. Maybe both things were true, but the decision was made without him, not offered a chance to try, not given the courtesy of a conversation, simply not called. Then Full Moon Fever became a massive hit, and Petty took it on tour, and he asked Lynch to play the songs live. Think about what that is. 13 years in this band, every album, every harmony sung into a microphone behind a man whose name is on the marquee and not yours. And now, your band leader hands you the sheet music for songs recorded in a room you were never invited into, and asks you to stand on a stage in front of 20,000 people every night and perform them like they belong to you. Night after night, city after city, playing songs you didn't make, sitting in for a drummer who was never hired, because that drummer was supposed to be you. Lynch was furious. He made no secret of it. He was the loudest voice in the band about his anger, and every word of it got back to Petty. 1991, Into the Great Wide Open, the next Heartbreakers record. Lynch is technically back, but he described those sessions in a way that tells you everything about what the relationship had become. It wasn't great that I wasn't allowed to hang, he said. It was, get in here, do your shit, get out of here. Not really the best environment for me, personally. Get in, do your shit, get out. That is not how you talk to a founding member. That is how you talk to someone you've already decided you don't need. You just haven't told them yet. Lynch could feel it. The walls coming in, the temperature dropping, the conversations getting shorter. He had spent years being the loudest personality in a band that was growing increasingly quiet around him. And what came next would confirm everything he already suspected. Chapter 4. 1994. Wildflowers is in production with Rick Rubin. Campbell is there. Tench is there. Epstein is there. Stan Lynch is not. In his place, Steve Ferroni. An English drummer born in Brighton, who Campbell had met years earlier while they were both playing on George Harrison's Japan tour. Ferroni's resume was immaculate. 8 years with the Average White Band, 6 years on the road with Eric Clapton, studio work with Duran Duran, Chaka Khan, the Bee Gees, one of the most respected session players in the business. Nobody was calling Ferroni a scrub. But he wasn't a heartbreaker. He had no history with this band, no stake in what they'd built, no 19 years of sweat behind those songs. He was a hire, a very good hire, and that was exactly the point. Campbell vouched for him. The inner circle made the call. Lynch wasn't even in the conversation. There was one exception. The label wanted a greatest hits package and needed 2 new songs. Lynch was called back in. They cut Mary Jane's Last Dance. It became one of the biggest songs of the band's career. That opening pull of a bass line, that swamp funk groove Lynch put underneath it, controlled and heavy and perfectly greasy, the kind of feel you can't hire into a room. You either have it or you don't. Lynch had it, always had it. In between takes, Petty could already feel Lynch pulling away. He'd heard through friends that Lynch didn't consider the Heartbreakers his main band anymore, that he was making noise about auditioning for other groups. The last song Stan Lynch ever recorded with Tom Petty was a hit. He just didn't know it was goodbye. October 2nd, 1994, the Bridge School Benefit Concert, Mountain View, California. The Heartbreakers haven't been on the road together in nearly a year. They come out for one night, one acoustic set, in front of a crowd that has no idea they are watching a band play its final show with its original drummer. Backstage, misery. Lynch is angry about the set list, angry about being asked again to perform Full Moon Fever songs he didn't record, angry about 5 years of being pushed to the edge of his own band. Petty, who would later use the word misery specifically to describe that backstage, can feel every bit of it. They go out and play. I Won't Back Down, Free Fallin', Time to Move On. Nobody in that crowd knew how literal that last title was. After the show, Demetriades picks up the phone. He dials Lynch. Lynch answers. Before Demetriades can find the words, Lynch beats him to it. Am I fired? Yes, Stan, you are. Lynch said later that he sat down at the drum kit in his house and didn't know whether to cry or throw up. He had to take the kit apart, pull the mementos off the walls, the photos, the passes, 19 years of artifacts, strip the whole thing out of his life. He said it was like Men in Black. He had to erase himself. 8 years passed. He didn't speak to Petty again, and the silence would have been the whole story if Lynch hadn't already been building something else. Chapter 5. Here's what nobody was tracking while the Heartbreakers were slowly pushing Lynch toward the door. Producer and songwriter Danny Korchmar calls Lynch to work on Don Henley's solo material. Lynch co-writes Drivin' With Your Eyes Closed for Building the Perfect Beast. First foot in a different door. He's still a heartbreaker, but something else is starting. 1989, Korchmar calls again. Henley is making The End of the Innocents, and this time, Lynch's role is dramatically different. Not a drummer brought in to track a few songs, a writer, a producer, the person in the room who catches what the other two are too deep in the weeds to hear. Henley described it later. During the worst stretches of recording, when he and Korchmar were losing their minds, Lynch would walk in and cut the tension. Fresh ears, a sounding board, someone who could tell them what was working and what wasn't without any ego attached to the answer. Lynch co-wrote The Last Worthless Evening. He helped shape the record from the inside out. The End of the Innocents went 6 times platinum. Won a Grammy, one of the defining albums of that era. And the whole time he was in that room with Henley, the Heartbreakers were treating him like a session player they were tolerating. 1994. The same year Petty cut Wildflowers without him, Lynch was co-writing Learn to Be Still for the Eagles' reunion album Hell Freezes Over. The Eagles, a band that hadn't been in a room together in 14 years. They called Lynch. He co-wrote the track, co-produced it, and toured with them as a percussionist, while Petty was replacing him with a hire from the Harrison Tour. Don Henley and the Eagles were treating Lynch like exactly what he was, one of the best creative minds in the room. 2004. Lynch writes a song called Back When. Tim McGraw records it, #1 on the country charts. The man Petty's manager fired by phone had a #1 hit. 2002. The band is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Lynch comes back for the ceremony and plays the show. He and Petty talk, briefly, civilly, for the first time in 8 years. A handshake where there used to be a brotherhood. Then nothing. Not another word for 15 more years. October 2nd, 2017. Petty had just finished the Heartbreakers' 40th anniversary tour. 53 shows across the summer. The last one at the Hollywood Bowl on September 25th, ending the night on American Girl, the song that started everything back in 1976, the year Lynch walked into that recording session and never left. What nobody in those crowds knew, what Petty hadn't told most of his own bandmates, was that he had played every one of those 53 shows with a fractured hip. He'd been told before the tour started. He went anyway. Night after night, city after city, on a fractured hip, because he had made a commitment to his fans, and that was the kind of man he was. As the weeks went on, the injury got worse. On October 2nd, exactly 23 years to the day after the Bridge School benefit, the last show Lynch ever played with him, Petty's doctors delivered the news. The fracture had become a full break. That night, he went into cardiac arrest at his home in Malibu. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center. He couldn't be revived. 66 years old. The coroner's report came months later. Accidental overdose. Fentanyl, oxycodone, sedatives, and antidepressant. A mix of prescriptions taken to manage a body that had finally hit its limit after decades of touring, and a hip that had been broken for weeks while he stood on stages and played for tens of thousands of people. Lynch heard the news and said it put him straight on his knees, literally on the floor, staring at the sky, not knowing whether to say thank you or something else entirely. 23 years of distance, one brief conversation at a Hall of Fame ceremony, and now the door was closed for good.
I loved Tom. There's no question. I truly did love him. Doesn't mean that we got along all the time, but in the early years, we really did well together. I mean, that was a hell of a thing. If you ever saw that band live, I would venture to say that was one of the better live bands you'll ever see. And that was because of what we did for each other, me included, and obviously Tom. The bitterness of that would be, why did you punch out? Like, I mean, I didn't know all the details of why Tom left, but it was like, God damn it, man, don't do that. I hate it when I lose people in my life. I hate it. I just fucking hate it. I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you. It doesn't mean I like it.
It's 2026. Lynch is 70 years old, and he's back in a band. Not a reunion, not a tribute act. A real band. He co-founded the Speaker Wars with Texas singer-songwriter John Christopher Davis. When their debut album dropped in May 2025, Lynch wasn't just there to keep time. He played drums, guitar, and keyboards. He sang and co-produced the record. He wasn't a hired hand standing off to the side. He was a founding member, an equal. His name was on the thing. And that's what makes this whole story sting. The cruelest part wasn't the firing, it was what came after. Petty spent the rest of his career chasing sounds he'd already had. Lynch spent the rest of his proving exactly what the first band never let him be. More than a drummer, more than a sideman, more than the guy in the back. The Eagles knew it, Henley knew it, McGraw knew it. Petty was the last man in the room to figure it out, and by then, the phone call had already been made.